to the world. Subscribe now to the Hot 97 YouTube channel. It's Ebro in the Morning with Laura Stiles and Rosenberg.
Ebro. We got City Council soon to be Edwin Raymond on the program. What's up, sir?
I'm good, King. How you guys been? Laura, congrats on the little one.
Thank you, Edwin. Nice to see you.
Always.
Now, you stepped down as a sergeant with the NYPD, correct?
So from the last time I was on the show, I was fighting to get to lieutenant, and thankfully, because of the pressure and just common sense, right decision, I became Lieutenant Raymond. Because I'm running for office, I am currently on leave, but I'm still a member of the department technically.
And how does that work? So, like, you could technically retire now and become a politician. Could you become city council and then decide to go back into the force? How does that work? Nah,
it's pretty much it, because once you win a party nomination, and the primaries are June 22nd, you essentially you have 10 days to give up your position with the city. So June 22nd, I'll do my walkout, which is how we retire from the police force. Within that week, I'll do the walkout. I just got to win first,
And you're running for which city council seat?
So that's going to be District 40, which is in Brooklyn. That's Central Brooklyn. That's Flatbush, East Flatbush, Kensington, Ditmas Park, Prospect, Lefferts Garden, parts of Midwood, and the very southern part of Crown Heights. That real middle part of Brooklyn.
And what's the community saying to you? Are you getting feedback? I mean, I hear your name a lot. Obviously, I follow you, so I'm kind of inside your bubble.
Yeah.
I've donated to your campaign.
Appreciate it.
All that. We rooting for you, but what's street saying?
So it's a combination. There's a little generational gap where folks that are a little older, they really, because remember, I didn't do the work for any type of publicity or fame. I just did it because I'm really trying to get this work done. So there's a generational gap. Some people are not aware, but once they learn my story, they're on board. With the younger folks, they for the most part, they have an idea of who I am. Last year, which we're going to get into, we saw unprecedented protests, which really put a lot of attention on policing, and like even on social media, it was bittersweet, because I would wake up with 4,000 more followers, and I'm like, what happened? And I would notice Snoop Dogg just shared something from me or somebody else, and every time there's police misconduct, I become more known, which is bittersweet, because it's like I want people to know the work so we can make the changes, but it hurts that it has to happen because of people are getting hurt and killed out there. But so for the most part, the streets, once they know my story, they're on board. So I just got to make sure my story is known.
You can go to edwinraymond.com. Edwin Raymond for NYC Council has a link there. Register to vote. You can learn all about him. But going back to when the public notoriety started was the documentary Crime and Punishment, correct?
A little bit before that, there was a New York Times article, but the documentary,
yes, that's right.
Yeah, definitely put things on another level, because it's just easier to digest the information. You press play and you take it in, versus actually reading and doing research and going deeper. And the documentary, it ended up, let me see, a year after I first did your show, it actually won the Emmy. It was shortlisted for the Oscars, won a plethora of awards, and it's like I remember when I went to the Image Awards last year, and I didn't think, I'm not a celebrity, so people stopped me in the street in LA. They recognized me from the documentary. That was a very different feeling, and police officers have been reaching out all over. Hulu/Disney did the right thing last year after the murder of George Floyd. I spoke with them, and they made the film available for free on YouTube, and now it's available worldwide on YouTube. And every week I get someone that watches it, law enforcement, non-law enforcement, and they're like, "Wow, this is motivational. It's inspirational." And other police officers have become whistleblowers after seeing the film. So it's doing what it's supposed to do.
What have your relationships been like within the NYPD over the last year or two?
So after I did the show, obviously they didn't like that.
You don't say.
Yeah. And Ebro, man, Oh man, we might have to talk off air because a lot of cops hit me up, man. I don't know I don't know if you have too many fans in the police department. Some people like
y'all
you a
don't
lot.
like me, NYPD. What's the problem? What's the problem? Was it something I said?
Oh man, you know what's fair? I've done so many interviews, but I swear, yeah, the interview on your show is top 3, one of my favorites, man. It's just I know everything I'm going to say, and I'm still excited to watch it. You know what I mean? It was a good interview. But yeah, so they've, it's unfortunate, man. Rather than see me as an asset, they just I'm enemy of the state, and this is part of the reason why I've decided to go for city council. The council breaks up into different committees. I'm aiming to be the chair of the public safety committee. So rather than trying to get the leadership to acknowledge that I can actually help this thing, I'm going to be in a position where they're compelled to listen to me. It is what it is, and obviously a city council position, it's not all about policing. So I've been doing my homework. I have good mentors, Jamani Williams being one of them. And I'm ready for the position. I just got to get elected. But overall, a lot of cops have always reached out and said they appreciate and support what I'm doing, even the upper echelon. But it's gambling with your career to speak out like this. And most people are just not willing to go through that.
Do you ever fear that I'm sorry, Laura, that you're gambling with your life?
Oh no, that's exactly what it is. It's something I don't like to talk about too much. But I actually got death threats, and it is, that's like so many times I've been there where the hood thankfully recognized me. There's a situation I'm not going to talk too much about in detail, but all I know is I was definitely set up, and one of the OGs was like, yo, no, that's Dread. Nah, Dread is good. And I was so thankful that he recognized that, the work and the situation that should have went south. Instead, the community really caught me, and it's ironic and unorthodox being a police officer and the community really having your back like that. But shout out to the community, man.
Well, and that's because, and this might be why people in the NYPD don't like me. It's because the community doesn't want most of the things going on in the community that are going on.
That's it.
And things are exacerbated because there's too many corrupt cops that want the goings on because they get kickbacks, whether it be from the bail system, whether it be from private incarceration companies and publicly trade, all of that. They get kickbacks, man, to their unions and all that. So a lot of the crime that goes on, it's an inside job, Edwin. You know it. I know it. That's what they don't like about me is because I talk about it. And it's the white supremacists that activate inside these police precincts all over the country that the FBI has talked about, that the Attorney General at the state of New York, Tish James, has talked about. That's what they don't like. They want to be able to run around with their badge and a gun, be the end all be all for everything, and go unchecked. And that's not going to fly.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you said it, and the leadership, they perpetuate that culture. One of the things that's always asked is about diversity and how diversity is the answer, and I always tell them not necessarily, because to simply put more Black and brown bodies in uniform, but then expect them to just play along with whatever the system was before, and not truly embrace and tap into what that means. There are nuances that you can offer being, Black and brown and then joining the police department, but the leadership never sits those people at the table and says, you know what, we've been doing things this way. We want to learn from you. To teach us what it's like to be in the hood and what are better ways that we can get public safety without violating people's rights. That's not what's asked of Black and brown cops. We just we're basically told
it's vanity, bro.
It's just like,
vanity.
yo, be happy that you got hired. That's basically what the Bible is. Be happy.
Do your 20 years, get your pension, and stay out the way.
That's it, And every time, for public relations purposes, every time they want to say, look, what do you mean? Look, we're diverse. They'll throw somebody, pull somebody out of the attic and be like, go stand there and let them, let the people think we're diverse. But the true essence of diversity is it's not supposed to be cosmetic. It's supposed to be much deeper in terms of what experiences can those people bring? Not just when it's time to pacify the community, let's put some stars on a Black man and throw him in front of the people. I'm tired of it. I hate to be so frank, but That's not what we need. It's never been what we've needed. We need real reform. And, 5 years ago, there were people that were calling for reform that are today are just like, you know what? Enough, abolish the whole system. And we didn't have to get to that point. The leadership really ran this thing to the ground, to the point where people that felt that it was salvageable now feel there's just no way. I still feel it's salvageable because, I have that inside experience and I kind of know what levers to pull and what buttons to push. Again, and this is why I'm trying to get to City Hall to do it.
Edwin, we've all seen you and your documentary. You've been working so hard for change within the NYPD, right? But tell us about your experience being a police officer during the protests, how people viewed you and the type of reactions you got. Yeah. I'm very curious to hear from you.
Yeah, so that was challenging, and I'm used to the criticism because obviously I was even critical of myself for joining the police department in the beginning. But before I even get into that, Laura, I want to speak about what the atmosphere was like right before. It was social distancing. I actually just did the show to try to get some folks to really take Corona serious. And immediately we saw the disparities in how social distancing was handled. One part of Brooklyn, cops were giving out masks and just even caring who was who.
That would be the white wealthy part.
Thank you, Ebro. They can always count on Ebro. And obviously in the hood, it was basically the police department. They, in typical police department fashion, took the broken windows approach. They used social distancing, the lack of mask, as the justification to make that police stop. And we saw people getting slammed to the ground immediately. So that's what we were going through. And then George Floyd happens. And I remember watching that video and I said, wait, what? Is he really still on that man's neck? I remember seeing EMS come to render medical services and he's still on that man's neck, and I just remember saying, I remember sending the video to a few people like, this one is different. And then immediately, Laura, I saw something that I never saw before and I never thought I would see. Cops all over the country were going to social media, sometimes even in their uniforms, and denouncing that video, denouncing the actions of Officer Chauvin. And I was shocked to see that, and unfortunately, it didn't last long because the mass protests started. Rightfully so, the mass protests started all around the world, from Lagos to London, Tokyo to Toronto. Everybody was protesting because the video was just egregious. And then eventually, inevitably, Lieutenant Raymond has to go and work these protests. So the first day I was at the Brooklyn and Manhattan Bridge, and man, I felt it. I felt the energy. The crowd didn't know how to receive me. Some people recognized me, which was awesome. Jamani Williams was out there. He gave me a pound. That confused a lot of people. And then inevitably, there were situations where the protesters were going head to head, clashing with the cops. And I was able to basically, I basically took leadership in those situations. And I got so much respect from the protesters. But I looked over at the chief's faces, and you could just feel the hate. They didn't understand. Like the us versus them it's the worst I've ever seen it. And they did not, rather than again see an asset, I felt the energy. Like there was one situation where they completely blocked the Manhattan Bridge. They even used
they kettled them in there.
Yeah. Well, no, not that one. I'm talking about the protesters blocked the bridge.
Oh, right.
Like in civil disobedience, but they use like NYPD tactics. So there's certain ways that NYPD bike unit uses bikes to create barriers. They mimicked some of the most organized protesting I've ever seen. They had medics and radios. Since Occupy Wall Street, I've been working protests. I've never seen how sophisticated the protests have become. And there were ambulances, there were different emergency vehicles that needed to get to Manhattan from Brooklyn. And I was able to walk out and speak to one of the leaders in the protest group. And basically out of respect, he opened up one lane, just for those vehicles. And you would think that'd be respected and seen as, Lieutenant Raymond he's law enforcement, so he understands public safety, but at the same time, the community embraces him. Let's tap into this. But nah, man, but eventually folks that went head to head with me, because sometimes it happened, you're a traitor, you're a coon. I had to hear everything that black cops get. A lot of them did then go do research and got back at me on Instagram like, wow, I had no idea. I appreciate you. I had no idea that you existed, especially to see a man with locks. You got a kente mask on and you standing there with them, but then, after they did the research, for the most part, the respect comes very iota, just maybe half of 1% of people, no matter, they don't care what I've done. They don't care how much I've sacrificed. You join police, you're part of the problem. There's like a moral question, like just the fact that you would join law enforcement, seeing how problematic and detrimental it is. I don't mess with you. And I always tell them, like, look at public school. We know that system is messed up, but we never say someone's wrong becoming a teacher. If anything, we commend the teachers that get in and do make differences. There are some teachers that put blood, sweat, and tears into their curriculum and into their students, and we commend them. We acknowledge them. So why can't we acknowledge?
Great point.
When a police officer takes that type of initiative, why can't we respect that? But it is what it is. My objective.
Teachers, we don't have videos of teachers killing people and not getting held accountable.
Yeah, you're right.
That's
more obviously the violence is, if it bleeds, it leads. You know what I mean? So that's always going to jump out more.
But yeah, that's the piece. The violence is the piece. Mm-hmm. Like one of the things we talk about on this program is we are literally up here. We're not asking cops to, when they get into a violent altercation or somebody's got a gun, to put their gun away and potentially harm themselves. That's not what we're asking of police officers. We're asking them to not kill people who are unarmed. But time and time again, we see mass shooters who get safely taken into custody, right? And so as people who are on the outside, just as the public, but why do we always see these black men getting gunned down? Yeah. That's the problem. People can't digest that any longer, and they won't. And so, look, I salute you all, as always, for doing the work, and for the audience out there, whether it was, talking about the quota systems that exist inside the NYPD or standing inside in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick. Edwin Raymond's always been there, so he's ready to do the work. And clearly, he hasn't got enough of doing the work or signing up to city council, different type of annoying work. Right? And you're ready for that. Other than being on the public safety committee, what are some of your other platforms as you run for city council of the 40th district, right?
Correct, 40th. Yeah. So, we have to pay attention to the times. And right now, COVID relief is essential. This is what people are hurting. People are hurting. People have lost loved ones. People have lost their jobs. The economy is still suffering. So different types of COVID relief. We have to invest properly into education. Listen, I'm not an expert on everything, but as a leader, what I do is I speak to different stakeholders. So with my education plan, I've spoken to teachers, parents, and even students, to put together a robust response to what the issues are. And one of the things that you're always going to hear is funding. That's definitely a part of it, because you need to fund what the ideas have to have money behind them to become tangible. But we also have to, there's a lot of changes that are needed in the education system also. There's a lot. I'm not a parent yet, and I haven't been in public school in a minute, but my friends who are teachers, what they've shared with me since last year, the nuances of what goes on, there's a much better response than just funding, because money can be mismanaged and spent wrong. So simply throwing more money at the problem is not always the solution, but we do have to make sure things are properly funded. Housing, right? Flatbush. If you saw Flatbush 10 years ago and today's a completely different place, all these tall buildings going up all over, residential buildings, and oftentimes the community is they're not with it because they can't even afford a tour in the building. They've been here all their lives, poured so much into this community, and yet they're watching these structures be built and they can't even get a tour. So we have to change what affordable housing means. That's a big part of my platform now. Some of these things are not within the city council's immediate power, but that's where I'll continue to be a voice for the people and the voiceless, and work with federal partners to change what's called the area median income, which is how affordability is calculated for housing. of the AMI, the affordable, area median income, there are different counties such as Westchester and Suffolk.
That shouldn't be included.
That
We've been
should
talking about
not
that
be.
for years on here.
We can't. How do you compare someone in Flatbush, who's lower working class to someone pulling six figures living in Westchester and then setting the percentage to that? It's disrespectful, really. So but it can be changed. It doesn't have to remain that way. Obviously, developers are not going to be happy because that eats into the profit. But if we continue at this rate, we're going to have real issues in the city, much worse than what we're seeing now. So these are the different things that I want to tackle in the city council. Also, I really want to invest into the youth in the community. I'm still young enough to kind of still be there with them where I can understand them. But it's like J. Cole said, the middle child. I'm right there. I'm actually the same age as J. Cole, so I'm right there where I understand the young folks. But I'm still cut from the older community. So, but that generational gap, we got to pour into them. Discretionary funding. Every council member gets over $1 million to spend they're supposed to spend it within their district. That's a whole different subject. And I plan to invest into the district in ways that we haven't seen. Shout out to Michael K. Williams, who's a supporter and friend. We've spoken on expanding arts. 2 months ago, a man was assaulted with a bat on the corner of Flatbush and Parkside. He ended up being one of the best friends of Jean-Michel Basquiat. They grew up together in Flatbush. And to think that Jean-Michel Basquiat is from Flatbush and there's no performing visual arts center in his name, where young folks can get the grooming and the mentorship that they need to become our next, audio engineers, to become our next fashion designers and painters, et cetera. These are things that discretionary funds can be used to expand into the community on, and a plethora of other things, Ebro. I'm so excited and ready to do this, man. You have no idea.
Are there any mayoral candidates that you like what they're saying? Do you like what Eric Adams is saying about public safety? Maybe Yang, Diane Morales?
Yeah. So a lot of people they make the connection with me and Eric because there's a lot of similarities there, and I admire Eric. As a kid, I watched him on the news, speak truth to power at the podium, despite being a police officer. So he had already blazed that trail to let me know that if I ever wanted to, I can do it also. Obviously, there's going to be consequences, but I can do it also. There's going to be, we're still different people. So I'm still a member of the police department. So my information is much more up to date. There are some things that Eric shares that, I would love to update him on that just doesn't happen the same way anymore as it was 15 years ago when he left. But for the most part, he understands. He understands where there are detriments and balance is needed. Yang, shout out to Yang. Also, Yang's campaign actually reached out for my expertise in criminal justice and police issues. So I've been keeping them as sharp as possible on certain things. There are a few things we disagree on, such as plainclothes, the jump out boys. We don't need officers do not need to work in plainclothes. Maybe like intelligence officers because the uniform is not essential there. But the whole jump out boy, that whole thing, the D's, that thing that we had going, we don't need that. It's not essential.
You and Eric Adams disagree on that. He likes that unit.
They don't have to be in plain clothes. That's my main thing, because when they're not in plain clothes, it's less accountability. You barely know who they are. They're supposed to identify themselves, but there's a lot of games that get played. They can stay in unmarked vehicles. They can stay focused on primarily violent felonies. I can agree with that as long as it's being done within the parameters of the Constitution. But being in plain clothes is not essential. I've actually spoken to officers that used to be in that unit or are still, because the unit was revamped. They basically do the same thing, just now in uniform. They call it public safety officers. I've spoken to officers who are currently in public safety, and they even realize, you know what? We didn't have to be in plain clothes. It wasn't even essential. So, because it's not like they're tight,
but they like their tight V-neck T-shirts and their flex fit Yankee hats. They love those. And why do they wear them weird jeans? Y'all got weird pants y'all be wearing.
And why do the cops not like Ebro? Things we don't know.
Why y'all dress like that, man?
I'm gonna get so many text messages, man.
Yo, everybody know y'all plain clothes by how y'all dress. Y'all dress terrible.
Oh man, even Laura's shaking her head, man.
you like your tight V-neck white t-shirt.
But yeah, so it's not essential to get the job done. Let's listen. We do have to speak about public safety. There's been a serious uptick in violent crimes, like the old school numbers. We lost like 50 homicides in April. To compare, in 2017, we finished the year with less than 300 homicides. So to think in April, where it's not even hot yet, where it's not even millions of people outside every day in each other's faces yet, and we lost 50 people in April alone, and May is not looking good. We do have to discuss that. But one thing I want to make clear, because confirmation bias is dangerous. Those who are against reform automatically say, you see, defund the police. That's what y'all wanted, right? Ha. Now look, listen, I pay attention. As someone that's critical of the department and their tactics, I have to meticulously pay attention. The uptick in homicides and shootings happens the second week of March 2020. That's before Ahmaud Arbery. That's before Breonna Taylor. And that's before the unprecedented protests that we've seen since the murder of George Floyd. So there's no correlation there. All right. That's your bias getting confirmed because that's what you want to believe. All right. And you can check the numbers. You can check the stats. Obviously, if I'm saying it, I know like anything I say is up to interpretation, is up for review. So please do the research. The numbers start to climb, unprecedented numbers in comparison to 2019 in March of 2020.
And that's COVID related.
Yeah, 100%, man. Because because
they said the court system shut down, COVID related. Then you had the joblessness kick in, and then it was ill too, like April, May 2020. It was mad fireworks being shot off all over the place. Yeah, remember that whole fireworks shit?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that one out because it's like somebody just dumped the truck because it ain't your regular M80 and a couple skyrockets. It was some serious, sophisticated stuff going off all over the city.
Edwin, motherfuckers had the full Macy's Day Parade shit going on in Brooklyn, bro.
Word. No, I know,
bro. That was, that was. Look, and by the way, the same thing was happening in LA. The same thing was happening in Philly. The same thing was happening in Atlanta. And the violence that we're talking about in New York right now, the same thing's going on all over the United States. Where are the guns coming from? Why aren't the police shutting it down? And it just so happens to align with everybody putting scrutiny on police officers, and now violence is out of control, just like they do when they destabilize nations, Edwin Raymond. They start conflict and violence because they know that people will vote more conservative when there's violence outside. They will vote for older folks, and voters will vote for someone who is more law and order if there's more violence outside. And the Republicans and all the people on the other side that want more Trump, more conservatism, more all of that, bruh, the police unions, all of them are aligned, man. They working in concert. You can't make me believe nothing else. And it's a perfect storm. COVID, all the scrutiny on police, all of it. It's the perfect storm. Storm.
Those are great points, and just speaking more to the violence. The one thing I can say, I've given so much thought to is the bail reform. Listen, bail was never designed to keep people in jail. Bail is designed to make sure you show up to court, which is why the prices were set depending on the severity of the offenses, the charges, to make sure you show up. If you put this money down, this is how much money you lose if you don't show up, and we're going to get you anyway with the warrant squad or the bounty hunters, etc. And the way that it's been used to purposely keep people in by setting high bail, I agree with getting rid of that. But we do have to make sure that there's balance, that the pendulum doesn't swing too far in a other direction. Because as I look through the list of things that you automatically are basically released for with the court date, some of the we have to tighten it up a little bit. Some of the offenses and charges don't make sense. Like certain degrees of robbery and burglary, you're just released for weapons charges, arson, different types of child abuse. Believe it or not, promoting and possessing sexual performance by a child. You just get released for that. You don't get remanded. Now, should bail be should it be bail? Not necessarily, but depending on certain
Because
offenses.
people could get bail.
Exactly, that
You don't,
too.
some of those people, you don't even want them to have bail.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm going with this. Like we
I agree with
do,
you.
as a society, we have to have that larger conversation about how we handle certain charges. Because yes, habeas corpus, you have the right to due process. You're not guilty, until you're guilty by the court. But at the same time, we've seen the pattern where someone was arrested for that weapon and 3 months later actually didn't caught the body. So we do have to ask ourselves, if we treated that weapons charge back in March a little bit more serious, that body wouldn't have been caught in June. And some people are not going to want to hear this, but I respond to those people as they're taking their last breath, squeezing my ankle, saying, please don't let me die. It takes a toll on you, man. And you got to meet parents who, got to the point, man, depending on the scream from the woman, I could tell if it was the baby mom, if it was the mother, if it was the girlfriend, if it was the sister. Like, I was able to categorize the screams, bro. That's how many homicides I was responding to. And listen, we gotta be serious about how we deal with this. Now, the over aggressive, throw out the fishnet and grab everybody up. Well, we don't want to do that. Looking for a needle in the haystack, so burn the whole haystack. We don't want to do that. We need surgical methods of getting those who are the most violent. But at the same time, you got to remember, public safety is not the sole responsibility of law enforcement. We need resources. Other communities, I use Italians. Back in the days, mafia was dropping bodies all up and down the East River. Bones are still being dug up all over Brooklyn, South Brooklyn, and yet we didn't over-police the entire Italian community. We surgically went after those who were most violent, and the rest of the Italian community got the resources so that they don't go into those lifestyles. There's no reason why Black and brown people don't deserve that same treatment, that same response. And this is what the United States has done. It's just treated us so different in how things get handled. Substance abuse is a big one that many people have spoken about. When it's us sending narcotics, when it's others, we need injection sites. We need an entire unit of detectives dedicated to finding the root of the issue. We need officers with Narcan able to bring people back to life, who have overdosed. And those are all great things. And I'm glad they're there. But why weren't they there 25 years ago when there was people that looked like us who were suffering, when there was people who looked like us who are on the receiving ends of these issues? And this is what the United States has been guilty of, that we have to change. And this is why we just need people that are brave enough to do it, that are courageous enough to do it. You need people that understand what public service means. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's about the people you represent.
Edwin Raymond, City Council, District 40, Brooklyn. Thank you for your time today, man.
Thank you,
Edwin.
All right.
If people want to follow, donate, how does it go down? EdwinRaymond.com?
Yeah, EdwinRaymond.com. E.Raymond_, just Edwin Raymond on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. Edwin Raymond NYC on Twitter, Edwin Raymond on Facebook. And please, guys, check out Crime and Punishment on YouTube. It is free now. You don't need to have Hulu anymore. It's Crime, the +sign Punishment, or put Crime and Punishment, put documentary. It's also the name of a famous book, so other things are going to come up. And you'll see the green glow, the green border around the thumbnail. That lets you know it's the Hulu doc. You'll learn, you get a crash course in the work that I've done. And, let's make this happen. Let's get some real progressives into city council. One thing I'll close on is, when me and the 11 other officers went public, we had hoped the self-proclaimed progressive mayor would embrace us, and he didn't. When Frank Serpico, look him up, 1973, blew the whistle on corruption, that mayor, then Mayor Lindsay, it triggered an investigation into what Serpico was saying. That's what we hoped de Blasio would do, but he didn't. Instead, almost 6 years later, law department of the city continues to fight the lawsuit. Our lawsuit has the potential to change policing in America. And had de Blasio embraced us 6 years ago, that's what would have happened. So many things probably would not have happened because people emulate New York's policing style. So at this point, he's on his way out. Let's get the right people in there so we can move this thing forward. I appreciate being on the show. This is probably going to be top 4 favorite interview And I listen, I appreciate it, and I won't let you guys down. I'll continue being here for the people.
Thank you,
Edwin
Edwin.
Raymond, thank you so much,
Thank
man.
you, Edwin.
Peace.